some of the debates got really vigorous when it came to applications in what I would call limit cases or kind of extreme cases. So, for example, let's imagine a hospital of the future that is so automated that a patient could walk in, get diagnosed, prescribed medication, and discharged without ever encountering a person. Technically possible. Okay. No, it sounds like kind of weird and spooky, and we wouldn't want that. But what if that level of automation and efficiency allows you to place 50 of these hospitals in a developing region in a in a indigent area, right? Versus we need to staff it with at least two people. Oh, okay, well, then you can only do 10. And we had divergence, and it really then forced us to think for everybody, regardless of position. Well, why does that bother you? What is missing?
If I can just maybe start off and just to both of you, what were the conversations like these last 2 days?
I think very productive conversation. So our group, about 15 people with very diverse expertise, and really everyone authentically engaged in trying to think, where will the AI take us and how we can make sure that it takes us in the direction that helps preserve or maybe even amplify human dignity and the common good. So very much aligned with the uh, exhortation that Pope Leo included in his letter.
I'll just add, Michael referred to the group and the quality of the group. It was very diverse. So we had an executive from a hospital system, executives from insurance companies, medical school professor, theologians, an ethicist for a Catholic hospital trade association. So it was quite rich. It's about 13 people. And what was really striking is with that experience, taking Catholic social teaching principles from the intellectual tradition like human dignity, and how does that apply practically within these separate contexts for these individuals to make it real. And that was really powerful.
Can you both share maybe briefly like what separates Catholic healthcare from like general healthcare?
Maybe I'll just quickly respond and then Michael, you can add. Clearly, a Catholic sort of sensibility versus a secular sensibility does have this primacy on human dignity and sanctity of life. Also acknowledges suffering and as a formative experience. So the way that might translate then into the application of AI is as things get more mechanized, as AI gets more powerful and supplants human capabilities, how do you preserve the human connection in that healthcare sort of event or activity, especially not just now, but like decades from now. And so we wrestled with how do you define that sort of bright line boundary where human needs to be involved when computers and AI and robots will be, arguably more effective.
Right. I'll quote one of our session participants who said that purpose of Catholic healthcare is to extend the healing ministry of Jesus Christ. Right. And I think that that's a really important context. And I think another participant emphasized that in the Catholic social teaching, and as it pertains to healthcare, the spiritual and the physical are part, that's who we are as humans, and you cannot separate it, right? So that has important implications for the use of AI. We cannot say, just put the spiritual aside and look what AI will do for the physical. We have to keep the holistic context in mind, right? And that's kind of underpins human dignity. So, but that's the mission and the difference of Catholic healthcare.
Where did you guys find the most spirited debate?
I think an interesting question we were trying to address, and I let Lewis comment because he really was going deep into it. The question was the role of humans, people, in the context of the healthcare enterprise, right? So the very interesting discussion was how much can we delegate to artificial intelligence, and what are the tasks that remain intrinsically human that you need a person, right? Full recognition, AI is not a person. So that's important to set aside very, very clearly, right? So you need human beings interacting with human beings in the context of healthcare. But I think where some differing views came is how far we can allow artificial intelligence to go versus where the human being comes in.
Yeah, just to add to what Michael was saying, some of the debates got really vigorous when it came to applications in what I would call limit cases or kind of extreme cases. So, for example, let's imagine a hospital of the future that is so automated that a patient could walk in, get diagnosed, prescribed medication, and discharged without ever encountering a person. Technically possible. Okay. No, it sounds like kind of weird and spooky, and we wouldn't want that. But what if that level of automation and efficiency allows you to place 50 of these hospitals in a developing region, in a an indigent area, right? Versus, we need to staff it with at least 2 people. Well, okay, well, then you can only do 10. And we had divergence, and it really then forced us to think, for everybody, regardless of position, well, why does that bother you? What is missing? And that led to then a list that was generated. Well, some people said, well, what's missing is um, human accompaniment, a divine mediation, um, relationality. Some people said, we can't really trust AI to be without any human verification or consent. So there's a long list, but that was where we had some fierce debates, and it's sort of not surprising because you can have a list of principles. That's called principalism, but when you get to the actual application, that's where things get quite difficult.
When you both look at healthcare and applications for AI, where is it actively helping?
Right. So we spent a little bit of time looking at the kind of three goals that many health systems have. One is to increase access to care. Access is a major issue. Developed world, developing world, there is an issue of access. Affordability, healthcare in many countries like the US is too expensive. People cannot afford it. And then reliability, right? Receiving high quality care that's good and safe in this context, right? So those are the goals. And then we kind of juxtapose the Catholic social teaching principles and looked at examples of applications of AI that would satisfy one or more of these goals. So to give an example, ambient scribes are getting very popular, right? So when you come to the doctor, when I take my child to the pediatrician, it used to be that the poor doctor had to type in and talk to me or my child, right? Multitasking. Now there is the ambient scribe that listens to the conversation and creates the clinical note that the doctor will review afterwards, but it frees the clinician to have a face to face direct conversation. I like this example because it shows how AI is rehumanizing the interaction in the healthcare setting. Now, you also have to be careful that the clinician reads the note afterwards, right? That there are not errors, but that's just one example of positive application. And in general, there was consensus in our group that back office tasks, the tasks that either enhance or are not affecting the patient clinician interaction, having them delegated to AI, that's a positive, right? Filling out forms, all the things that we have nurses do or other healthcare professionals that have to do with the operation of healthcare, but not the encounter. I think AI can be very helpful, and that's viewed as a positive.
What lines do you guys see clearly the church should take to make sure that we don't cross that line in terms of AI, replacing that human care?
An example was what we termed non-impersonation. So even if an AI entity could feel like a person, it should be very clear to the patient. It is not a person. It's like a red light on a video recording. That was one example of kind of a bright line. Um, Another, let's go back to this personless hospital example. People acknowledge, you may want to, it may be the expedient thing to do, proper thing to do. But at a minimum, as an example, we should provide everybody an option to talk to and meet a real person in all of these settings. Uh, so those are two kind of examples of sort of edge cases and where, Catholic sensibilities, come into play. Can I just add one thing about the question about just the role of AI? I think, for people not in healthcare systems, they should be aware that's really natural to think of AI and its concerns in a patient clinician interaction. But of course, AI is suffused everywhere. Administrative tasks, um, uh, data, storage. It's just not only the patient doctor interaction. Obviously, diagnosis, development of drugs, it's everywhere. We handed out a sheet, probably 50 areas where AI is suffused in healthcare. And for most people, it's not visible to them.
What are you both most excited about in terms of the future?
So I think there is a lot of inefficiency in healthcare, right? The costs are rising, the quality as measured as life expectancy and health is not going up. So, right, there are issues of national debt related to the cost of healthcare. So, I think AI can be very helpful. I mentioned the back office interactions, making it more efficient, again, aligned with the good of patients, right? So, I think we can believe that we might be able to improve care, increase access, and reduce cost with the use of technology. I will say, I think the next frontier is more direct clinical applications. And interestingly, um, pre-pandemic, pre-GPT, you saw a lot of development focused on the clinical, better diagnosis, better prediction, right? Going into the preventing disease or curing disease. Post-pandemic, with the strain on healthcare and emergence of GPT, generative AI, which lends itself to the more operational tasks, it shifted more to the back office operations. And that's where the focus is. But I hope that down the line will move into the diagnosis, right? Being able to catch breast cancer that's not visible on mammography because AI is able to use it, right? Those are the examples that will be, through prevention, will be saving lives, identifying new treatments and medicines, new cures that will come in as a result of having AI. So I think it's a staged process, but with tremendous positive potential.
Instead of answering what am I excited about, so I'm not a formal practitioner, I'll address what I'm curious about with AI and healthcare. And my personal focus is, and now that I'm transitioning from the tech industry into the healthcare field, it's in the area of hospice and palliative care, end of life care. And specifically, I'm curious about spiritual health. Um, uh, I'm one of several advisors to a physician, George Washington University, who Dr. Christina Pukowski, who leads an initiative to inculcate more spiritual care in clinics and hospitals, essentially raising the chaplain at a peer level with doctors. And she has a lot of research and methods to measure spiritual distress, to inculcate more spiritual health. What is the role in AI in that? Could AI, through this ambient listening, listen to a conversation, detect or in advance spiritual distress? And a controversial area is in facilities where there aren't enough nurses or chaplains. Um, Whether we like it or not, there are already bots even little robots that provides some facsimile of a companion. And what are the issues with that? So those are things that I'd say curious about.
I have one final question here. If you had one thing you wanted the institutional church or the Vatican to take seriously with regards to healthcare and AI, what would you want to see happen?
So recently, I have studied Rerum Novarum, right? The encyclical written at the time of a technological revolution from over 100 years ago. And it was very, very influential, right? And we can see the history meander through different places, but the spirit of Rerum Novarum helped shape it and help kind of avoid the extremes of communism on the one hand and unencumbered capitalism on the other. And we're not in a perfect society, but there is some kind of middle ground here, right? So I'm thinking that there is an opportunity, and with Pope Leo choosing the name Leo, I think pointing out in that direction, I think the society at large, as one of the participants commented, this is the opportunity for Catholic Church to lead. There is a void in the ethical space, right? So having a well thought out encyclical on AI, and again, it's developing, it's changing, right? It's not an easy document to be writing. I think would be very, very valuable for Catholics, but I think for the world at large.
I would add technical literacy that's quite deep and acknowledges, I think, a lot of concerns around AI, even just positive statements about AI, is really addressing chatbots. When you really kind of dig down, like what what's your vision of AI, your concerns, and what are you envisioning? They're really talking about chatbots. And AI is much broader than that. And in 5, 10 years from now, it'll be even broader than that. So without that kind of deep level of technical literacy that understands how AI works in different domains, things stay at kind of a platitudinal level, and that would be unfortunate. We have Vatican scientists and bioethics and even astronomy. Uh, we need to demonstrate a similar level of literacy for AI. The second thing I would add is go below the principles and have case studies and investigations when these principles are actually applied in really tough limit conditions. As you go through, the different Catholic social teaching principles, some of them will force decisions that are at odds at each other, and having case studies and helping people discern that is really important.
Well, Louis, Michael, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the time, for the conversations, and the incredible work that you guys are doing. I hope we can do this again at next year's Builders AI Forum.
Thanks for the great questions.
Thank you for having us.